Hey everybody, Corrections 101 here. I hope everybody's having a great day. I was sent this story by one of my followers asking my opinion on it. They know that I've worked both juvenile and adult jails, and there seems to be issues at this one juvenile detention center in Ohio, and they asked me my opinion of it. So we're going to watch a couple videos on it. Let me kind of preface before we get into the videos, these news reports. Juvenile justice or juvenile detention centers, they're not any different from adult prisons or adult jails. They are very understaffed. There's a lot of violence, extremely dangerous. I think what differentiates juvenile detention centers from adult jails and adult prisons is the tools that you are allowed to use. So the last couple juvenile detention centers, because like I said, I've worked both in the adult and juvenile jails. I think juvenile detention centers in Illinois and Iowa, you have a lot of the state coming in and saying what you can and can't use as far as tools. These people they've never worked in a juvenile detention center. They really, they're academics, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a good educational background, but they have absolutely no experience working in juvenile detention centers. And so the problem is these people at the state, they look at juvenile offenders as cute, cuddly kids. They're just misunderstood. We used to be able to use restraint chairs. We can't use those anymore for violent juvenile offenders. We can't use tasers. The only thing that we can use, and it just depends on the juvenile detention center, what state you're in, depends on the administration, depends on the superintendent and everything else on even if you can use OC spray to put down a violent altercation. It just really depends. But there's just a lot of increased scrutiny to where, like I said, it's like, my opinion is, if a juvenile is 17 years old and they commit murder or rape or some other violent crime, and they go into a juvenile detention center and they assault staff, I'm sorry, you have lost your right to be out in the pod, to be out in general population. You're done. Okay. You've injured an officer. Until your case is resolved, you're in seg. You're done. That's my opinion. I think that's the way it should be done. But they bring in these psychiatrists and psychologists with these studies saying, well, it's hard on the mental health of the juvenile if you put them in seg or, keep them in the room or their cell, if, they violently assault staff. Well, here's my deal. What about the mental toll and taxing and the physical well-being of correctional officers that have to deal with these same individuals over and over and over? And that's the way it is. And that's the same way with adult and juvenile. There's a lot of the same factors in adult and jail, correctional facilities to where 10% of your population causes 95% of the problems. Okay. The majority of the population, they're not going to be bad. They're going to be cooperative. They're going to, follow instructions. They're going to follow the schedule. They're going to do what they need to do. But it's that 10% that it causes just almost all of your problems. And it's over and over and over. And it's not unheard of to where we've had, violent offenders, whether it's juvenile or adult, to where you're going hands-on with them 2, 3, 4 times a shift. One of the problems that we see in both the adult and juvenile corrections agencies is that if an offender, let's say, assaults a correctional officer and charges are filed, well, let me take that back. Lots of times if an offender, whether juvenile or adult, attacks a correctional officer, lots of times charges aren't even charged against that offender. They're not. We have really. When I went to law school, literally 90% of my class, as a 1L student, they were very, very open. They were very, very liberal. They were there to be a, agent of change against police, against corrections. So it's no wonder that we have a lot of these prosecutors coming out of law school and that have been there in law school, that they don't care. They don't care about police officers. They don't care about corrections officers. And I don't mean to make this political, but I mean, if we're going to be real about the political spectrums and how they view crime, and how they view police and corrections and everything, it's really frustrating that a lot of times those charges never even get pressed. And then when the charges are charged against these offenders for attacking corrections officers, I would say 95 times out of 100, those charges are dropped in conjunction with the plea agreement. So let's say they're there for manslaughter, okay? And instead of going to trial, let's say the case against them is very strong, they'll go ahead and accept a plea deal to accept to plead guilty to manslaughter, and then as a condition of pleading to that, they'll go ahead and drop the assault to corrections officers, peace officers, whatever it is, because lots of times it's not only assaults against corrections officers. Lots of times when frontline police are out there to take these offenders into custody on a warrant, or after a crime has been committed and they're in pursuit of these individuals, these police officers are also assaulted. And so, these assaults are not taken seriously against police officers or corrections officers. Doesn't matter if they're adult or juvenile. They're almost always dropped if they're even pressed at all. And offenders know this. Okay, they talk especially while they're in custody. Offenders talk and they know what they can get away with. And then once the offenders find out that, hey, this charge against so-and-so was dropped part of his plea deal and he just broke a corrections officer's nose, we can do the same thing, because even if we're charged with it, which we probably won't even be charged with it, those charges will be dropped. So lots of problems, and just the understaffing alone too. So the current agency I'm with, it's a great agency so far. I've been there for 2 months. I'm not going to say whether it's adult or juvenile, because unfortunately there's even people in our community that would screw with my job because they don't like my content or whatever. And if you think for 1 second that they wouldn't try to screw with my career or with my job, then you have another thing coming. They absolutely would do that. So I got to be very guarded about where I work in which capacity. I'd love to talk about it in a more detailed way about what state, about what kind of correctional facility it is. But unfortunately, we just have a handful of people that will dox anything that I put, anything that they can, because they don't like me personally or whatever. Okay. So juvenile correctional facilities, they're very, very dangerous. So just because they're juvenile doesn't make it any less dangerous than adult correctional facilities. And in many ways, it's a lot more dangerous, because not only the understaffing that you still have at the adult level, but like I said, the things that you can use in adult jails, like in a restraint chair, tasers, things like that, you can't use in juvenile detention centers. Some detention centers you can use OC spray, depending on the detention center, depending on the state, depending on your administration. But you can only use it under very strict circumstances. Like, let's say there's, you have to be outnumbered 3 or 4 juveniles against yourself to be able to deploy it. So if there's just 2 juveniles fighting, you can't use OC spray. And so you're just left hands on and you're understaffed. And so your nearest backup might be 60 to 90 seconds away, because you're so spread out through the facility. And 60 to 90 seconds in a fight is a long time. Let me tell you, it's a very, very long time. Even 30 seconds, it can feel like 5 minutes. It's a long time. I've been in literally hundreds of uses of force, restraints, and even 10 seconds feels like a minute or two. It seems like it takes forever. But anyway, that's kind of my history on juvenile. Let's take a look at this clip that someone sent me, and we'll talk about it, and I'll pause it and stop it as needed.
Now to a story we first told you about a year ago when a guard was brutally attacked by a youth inmate at the Indian River Juvenile Correctional Facility in Massillon, which was followed by an inmate uprising. Aubrey Buckley has an update, including reports of more attacks at the...
See, an uprising like this happens all too much. You can actually search over YouTube for uprisings in juvenile detention centers, and there's a bunch of them out there. And the reason why these things happen is because of the understaffing. They just overwhelm corrections officers where they're spread way too thin. And like I said, a lot of these guys, the last juvenile detention center I was at, we had a kid that was in there for murder, and he got in a violent fight with the kid. In the state, of course, they came in, they have these rules saying, well, you just can't lock them down. You can't lock them down for 3, 4, 5 days to actually give them serious punishment. Literally 2 hours later, because of those policies that the state said, he was back out on his pod. And when another juvenile was getting escorted into the pod to go back up to his cell, this violent murderer offender attacked this second juvenile. Should have never happened. Other juveniles, the state doesn't think about other juveniles, and they don't think about staff. It's all about, well, it's just a kid. Well, no, they're not a kid. They're a murderer. And in many cases, these kids are a lot larger than even detention staff. And most of them are hardened thugs. They're gang members. They grew up on the streets. They have no problem shooting somebody or shooting them in the back of the head. They don't care. These aren't little cute, cuddly little kids. But I digress.
Facility.
This week marks 1 year since the uprising at Indian River Juvenile Correctional Facility in Massillon, when youth inmates broke out of their rooms, leading to a 12-hour standoff as they barricaded themselves inside the facility's school. Days before that, corrections officer David Upshaw was brutally attacked by a youth inmate, leaving him fighting for his life.
And again, this happened just a couple days before this happened. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I guarantee you, because of the state, I guarantee you the juvenile or the juveniles that attacked him were in on this uprising to take over the facility. It's ridiculous.
A year later, and staff say not much has changed to prevent incidents like these from happening again.
The administration says the acts of violence seem to be decreasing. They keep telling us they got a handle on things, and then, the next thing you know, there's these other acts of violence.
Christopher Mabe is the president of the Ohio Civil Service.
Yeah, and this is in Ohio. I was at juvenile detention centers in Illinois and Iowa. I can tell you in Illinois and Iowa, the decrease of juvenile attacks on correctional officers is not on the decline. And I would have a very, very hard time believing that in Ohio that they are on the decline. They have a way of playing with numbers. It's kind of like that saying, what is it? There's statistics and damn statistics. They can be altered. They can be reallocated to kind of paint a picture of the way they want to where, hey, we're the state, we're doing a great job. I don't believe that for 1 second, just based off of my experience.
Employees Association, representing workers at Indian River and around the state. He visited the facility Tuesday as 7 staff members have been assaulted since October 8th.
Very hard assaults. I mean, they're life-changing events. I mean, these aren't things of small instances.
And I believe this is from 1 month ago. So October 8th, that would have been 7 assaults on staff. You're looking at, what, a month and a half or so when this was done?
Somebody's being pushed or, somebody's being pinched. These are incidents of large-scale violence that change people's lives.
And that's the thing. I mean, we think that, okay, an assault on an officer is, with juveniles, it's just something small. They're not. They're very, very, very violent. They're every bit as violent as an adult correctional facility. Like I said, these are hardened juveniles. They grew up in gangs, in and out of juvenile detention. A lot of them are raised on the streets by adult offenders that are gang members. They're taught all the things that you can do to assault corrections officers. Like I said, these aren't cute, cuddly kids.
An employee spoke to 3 News anonymously to protect their job and says a youth inmate attacked a teacher this past week because the teacher found the youth's contraband and turned it in. That sent the teacher and a youth specialist, known as a YS, who tried to break it up, both to the hospital.
Word was out that there was good. And that's the thing. I mean, a teacher found contraband on one of these juveniles, because, we have to have them in classrooms and all this stuff, these hardened thugs. But, these juveniles got so mad that the teacher turned over this stuff that they weren't supposed to have on them. And so they got mad and assaulted staff and sent them to the hospital, because they know they can get away with it. Nothing's going to happen with it. I guarantee it.
Going to be an assault. And of course, no protections were done. And the kid went to assault the staff, and the YS that was there tried to protect the staff and got split open with a chair.
I reached out to the Department of Youth Services about these issues, and a spokesperson says Indian River is considered fully staffed with 142 juvenile corrections officers. Currently, they have 28 spots open, saying other juvenile justice centers are also experiencing unprecedented staffing shortages. In addition,
and yes, juvenile detention centers everywhere. They're very much understaffed. Then when you take away the tools they can use to protect themselves, like restraint chairs, tasers, and stuff like that, it's just inviting for major assaults to happen, which do happen regularly. And that's the thing. Like it says in this news report, and this corrections officer, his life was forever changed. His health is never going to be the same. But there's no thought ever for these corrections officers dealing in juvenile detention facilities. It's all about, what can we do for the kids? How can we help them? Which is a noble goal for the kids that, for the juveniles that we can help. And that may not have violent tendencies, sure. But there's ones that that have been through juvenile detention 8 times, very violent, have several, assaults on corrections officers, from previous detention stays and stuff like that, to where, no, they don't need to be in school. They don't need to be out in general population. They need to be locked down for the safety and security of not only the facility, but for staff. What's lost in all this is the damage, the physical, the emotional damage of juvenile detention officers. That's why the suicide rate, the depression rate, and everything for juvenile detention officers is not only the same as correctional staff at a jail or prison, but in some studies that I've seen suggested that it's higher in juvenile detention centers, because just the lack of tools you can use to defend yourself is non-existent.
To the body-worn cameras and pepper spray issued to certain supervisors last November after the incident, I'm told they also added more secure keychains, radio holsters, and training to reduce youth on staff violence. They're also offering $150 incentive pay to work weekends.
And that's the problem with juvenile detention centers. We go through so many background checks. We go through way more background checks than adult correctional facilities. Not only do we have to go through a background check with the detention center, with the county or whatever it is that we're involved with, but we have to go through the state background check. In Illinois with just a lot of different agencies that have their hands in with it. So if we go through, excruciating background checks, every single officer there should be able to carry OC spray, not just a few select ones. It's ridiculous. If you're entrusting people to have juveniles' lives in your hands, they go through all the scrutiny, you go through all these background checks, you go through enhanced background checks with the state because you're dealing with juveniles. It's ridiculous that not every single officer there should be certified, trained, obviously, to be able to carry OC spray to defend themselves or to defend other juvenile offenders from other juvenile violent offenders.
On top of the $50 incentive for Monday through Thursday. But some say it's still not enough.
Talking to the staff, it seems like their whole conclusion is nothing changes. They feel like no one's doing anything to protect them, that things just run rampant inside the facilities, that they don't have safety and security devices to help protect themselves and provide a safe, secure, humane environment for youth. and even talking to somebody.
And it's crazy. I mean, you see all this video footage of what these juveniles are doing. It's outrageous that any detention center that they're allowed to do this because they just don't have the staffing. They don't have the tools to protect the detention facility and detention officers from this violence. It's ridiculous that this can happen, and it happens regularly all across the country. Again, there's you can look all over YouTube, and there's all kinds of videos out there of just this kind of thing.
The youth up here today, I mean, they feel like there's a loss of control inside the facility.
I've kept in touch with Upshaw's family for the last year, and his wife tells me he's still fighting to recover. In May, he was hospitalized again with his kidneys failing and has been on dialysis on top of the initial brain injury, leaving him with memory loss and cognitive problems. Russ.
Okay, Bree Buckley in the newsroom. Thank you.
That's pretty sad. This guy has life-changing injuries, and I can almost guarantee you, I don't know anything about the juvenile offenders in this case. I don't know anything other than the news report of what happened here, but I can almost guarantee you that most, if not all of those juvenile offenders will never see justice for what they did in this situation. I mean, if charges were filed, they're probably going to be dropped as part of some plea deal. It's ridiculous. But there is another follow-up on this. Let's pull it up. Getting there.
Over 1 year since a series of disturbances at the Indian River Juvenile Correctional Facility in Massillon. In one incident, 12 teenagers escaped, barricaded themselves in a school building on campus. That led to an hours-long standoff. That was October of 2022, days after two guards at the same facility were attacked in separate incidents. 2 weeks later, the State Department of Corrections made changes to improve safety at its juvenile facilities. Guards started wearing body cameras and using pepper spray. Then in February, citing negligence, the state fired the facility's superintendent.
And if you remember in the previous report, it was only certain officers that were able to have OC spray. It's not all of them. And while body cameras are good to help with prosecuting juveniles who attack officers, body cameras aren't going to help you to defend yourself in these violent altercations. And I can guarantee you that just having the body cameras, they're not going to, in my opinion, it's not going to increase having charges gone through with these juveniles. They're still going to drop the charges. They're going to be dropped as part of a plea. They're not going to do anything with them. So rarely does that ever happen. I was involved when I was in Iowa at a juvenile detention center there. We had a really violent offender juvenile. I believe he was 16 years old. And there were days on a shift where we would go hands-on with him literally 3 or 4 times a day. I mean, anytime he was told no, and he was a big kid too. I mean, he was like 6'2", probably 190, in his late teens. And we just had to go hands-on with him all the time. And there was one night to where we were shorthanded. It was me and one other officer out on the floor and a supervisor that was in the control room. That was it. We had 3 staff for the entire facility. And I had brought up, hey, I said, with this one kid alone, we need to have 4 or 5 staff at a minimum in this kind of smaller detention facility. I think our rating, if I remember right, was like 26 or something. But it was ridiculous. We were only at 3. I said, this is ridiculous. And this other officer that was serving with me, he had only been a detention officer for, I think at that time, a month. So I had quite a bit of experience. He had only been there a month. And we had locked up this very, very violent juvenile for the night in his room because we had already gone hands-on with him twice that day, once on the previous shift, once on our shift. And, he was banging on his door saying he needed a Band-Aid. And I told this other officer, I said, do not open that door, slide that Band-Aid underneath the door of his cell because he's looking for that door to come open and it's going to be on and cracking. And he felt very confident with his limited experiences that, I'll be fine. So I kept telling him, I was like, don't open that door. And I saw him pull out his keys and start opening his door. I started running down the hall. I was like, no, 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 don't do it. And as soon as that door started coming open, after he opened the door, bang, he squeezed through that door and the fight was on. Punches were getting thrown. I got punched a couple times. And in that incident, you know, it was crazy. We ended up going to the floor. Everybody came down on me. It was just a freak accident, which happens in these violent altercations. And I ended up tearing my rotator cuff and both the front and rear slap tendons in my shoulder and had to have shoulder reconstruction surgery from it. So real injuries come from these things, you know, in detention centers. And even when, you know, you just have these freak accidents that happen, but real things happen to where I had to have major surgery done on it. You know, I missed work for what, four months or something like that, to where I was on workers' comp, and really nothing was changed after that. It was still the same understaffing, which is one of the reasons why I left that agency, went to a different agency in Illinois.
Superintendent and the gang intervention specialist, a deputy superintendent, was demoted. So, have those changes made the facility any safer? We follow through tonight, staying dedicated to this story by pursuing answers, part of a promise News 5 is making to you and our community. Here's News 5 investigator Tara Morgan.
And I tell you what, I actually give this news agency a credit. I give them credit. In you know, most of the news agencies and media are against law enforcement in general. They don't like police. They don't like corrections. They don't like you know. They would rather take the side of the bad guy before, you know, police officers and corrections officers. If something violent happens, something happens to an offender, it's always going to be the corrections officer's fault. It's always going to be the police officer's fault. There's never any accountability for offenders ever. But I give them credit on covering this story on you know, the problems that this particular juvenile detention facility is facing. And I have to take at face value what they're reporting. I don't know anything about this juvenile justice center. This is in Ohio. I know nothing about the juvenile detention centers in Ohio or the adult jails there either. I just solely have to go based on my experience and what they're reporting in this story.
We are nowhere near the end of this.
Wow.
Nowhere near the end of this.
Patricia Upshaw shares happier moments for her husband, David. The bigger picture is much different. She says he has PTSD and needs eye surgery.
It's been very rough, emotionally, physically. He's been, and you know, it's just the depression of it all.
David Upshaw is still recovering from when he was beaten by a 19-year-old at Indian River Youth Correctional 1 year ago.
He had a traumatic head injury.
Days later, a 16-year-old started a standoff, barricading himself and 11 others in a classroom. The teens are seen on video smashing things in a school building on campus. The standoff lasted 12 hours.
They've done nothing really.
And with the short succession between all these major incidents, that just screams to me, based on my experience, that they have lost full control of that juvenile detention center. I mean, the juveniles run that facility. I mean, they don't have the staffing or the tools needed to deal with the situation. Those juveniles have no fear in that facility. They know that there's no real consequences. They know they're not going to get tased. They know they're not going to be put in a restraint chair. And if they do get into a fight, they're probably going to be put in their cell for a couple hours and be right back out, because that's how the state wants it to be. In most states, it's ridiculous. You can tell there is no facility security left at this facility based at the time of this reporting, with the quick succession of these very violent acts. And it's not only one or two juveniles, as you can see, it's a lot of them.
To rectify the problems that, you know, they say, oh, we're fully staffed. No, they're not. They're not fully staffed. We hear that from the inside.
Union President Chris Mabe says attacks on staff members haven't stopped.
It was 7 in the last 14 days. And that's not just JCOs. Once again, there was a teacher, some other administrative staff in that.
Mabe marked the 1 year visiting Indian River.
The staff feel targeted. They feel left behind. They feel unsupported. They feel like they're still continuously in a dangerous situation.
What needs to happen to make things right?
Well, I mean, lack of staffing in the facility is obviously an issue that has to be dealt with. But if you can't get the training, you got to get the tools.
The Department of Youth Services says there are 114 correctional officers at Indian River and 28 vacancies. More secure keychains and radio holsters were given to designated staff. DYS says policy.
Wow, amazing. Body cameras and radio holsters. That's going to work good for protecting yourself when you're understaffed. That's amazing. This is what I mean by the state response. These people have no clue about, keeping safe in these facilities. I mean, let's just give them, better radio holsters. That's going to fix the problem of assaults on staff and protecting themselves. Radio holsters. That's fantastic. I held back the F-bomb there. I'm working on it.
Was created for body cameras and policy updates for OC spray. Mabe says juvenile correctional officers are not carrying it.
Even some of the supervisors that are carrying mace up there have told the staff up there that they wouldn't be utilizing that mace because they were afraid of being removed from their positions.
As for the 12 teens from...
And there you go. I mean, that's a lot of it too, is that, it's pretty sad because when there is a use of force incident, everything's reviewed by the state with multiple agencies, whether it's Division of Youth Services or DCFS, whatever it is. They all kind of have their hands in juvenile detention. And, I've been part of these, huge scrutiny of use of force incidents to where you get asked a lot of very difficult questions. And it's like, do you not see the video of what happened? And they have this feeling and attitude of, well, they're just kids. Why would you have to tackle them? Why would you have to handcuff them in this scenario? It's like, did you not see the video? Did you not just see him knock this officer out? Are you shitting me? It's ridiculous. But that's the thing, and it makes you second guess yourself to where it only opens you up to getting injured more, because instead of taking decisive action, which is totally justified, you're thinking of, oh my God, am I going to get prosecuted if I do the wrong thing? Or am I going to lose my job because some person at the state thinks that this is too much use of force because I OC sprayed this person, or I used handcuffs and they thought, well, handcuffs weren't justified. You could have just escorted them to their room, but never mind the fact that he just broke a chair over another officer's head. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
On the barricade, 6 are in prison, 4 remain at youth services, 1 is waiting in jail to be tried as an adult, 1 is on supervised parole.
So what's the solution?
The solution.
Notice how they didn't differentiate the charges based on the assault with the actual charges they were already facing. They said based on adult charges. Now, I've never seen a 16 or 17-year-old brought up on adult charges for attacking a corrections officer or other staff. I've never seen it. It's only for if they're 16, 17-year-old, sometimes even 15-year-old, if it's murder or grape or aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, they will charge them as an adult sometimes. But never one time have I actually seen a juvenile that has attacked a juvenile corrections officer violently and done major damage charged as an adult. I've never seen it. Not saying it never has, but I've never seen it in my experience.
Solution is revamp the whole place from your directors down. It has got to change.
David was in speech therapy when we stopped by. Patricia says he loved community service, but doesn't know if he'd return to his job at Indian River.
Would you want him to go?
No. That's an easy answer for me. No.
I'm News 5 investigator Tara Morgan.
Youth Services says overall violence against staff at Indian River has declined 31% compared to this time last year. They've seen.
I don't know if I believe that. I don't, they have a way of playing with statistics. I don't know. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. My gut tells me that's not entirely true. But like I said, I don't know anything about this agency or juvenile detention in Ohio. You just got to go based off of what is reported here. But I have a hard time believing that.
seen a 39% drop across all 3 facilities. DYS attributes that decrease in part to the introduction of body cameras and OC spray, saying that spray is reserved for the most extreme circumstances.
And there you go. OC spray should only be reserved for the most extreme circumstances. So what needs to happen before you use OC spray? An officer knocked out, an artery cut. What defines extreme circumstances to where you can use OC spray? I tell you what, how about 2 a violent juveniles attacking each other? Can you use OC spray then? You should damn well be able to use it. If they attack an officer in any way, should you be able to use OC spray? Absolutely. But here we go. It's this classification in the word games of, well, it can only be in the extreme, most extreme circumstances. Well, what the fuck does that mean? Sorry, I dropped the F-bomb, but this is really aggravating because they play these word games with the state, and with DCFS and DYS, and it's just, they play these games and you don't know what in the hell half time you can use as tools to defend yourself in juvenile detention. It's absolutely insane. And then if something does happen to go bad, then, well, you're going to be, have charges brought on you, because more than likely the state prosecutor, they're anti-police, anti-corrections, whatever. It's always the corrections' fault. It's never, it's always a police fault. It's never the offenders. They didn't do anything to contribute to the situation. Who cares if they if they attacked a corrections officer? If something bad happens during an altercation, it's got to be the corrections officer's fault. It's got to be the police officer's fault. It's absolutely insane. They never attribute anything to what happens to the offender, ever.
And only by select staff and managers.
So there you go, guys. That's just my take on this one story based on these 2 videos. Like I said, I don't know anything about detention centers in Ohio. I can only go based off of my experience working in detention centers in Illinois and in Iowa. I don't know. I can only go off this, but I do give the news credit here, this news agency, to where they actually reported on this, and it seemed to be pretty fair. You don't get a lot of that anymore with police officers or corrections officers that are hurt in the line of duty. You don't see that much anymore. So I appreciate the person, who you are, that sent this to me and wanted my take on it. This video has gone on longer than I intended it to, but I wanted to kind of give a detailed history based on my experience on what I have observed while working in multiple juvenile detention centers, my years of experience doing it, and just my thoughts and opinions on it. You can agree or disagree, but I can just give you my opinions based on my experience. If you have any questions about it, please put it in the comment section. If you want me to expand on anything, if you want a follow-up video, anything like that. The one thing I want to kind of do is invoke some kind of dialogue to where, people have, in a lot of situations, it's the press, they push one thing and it's not always true. It's a game, it seems like, to where it's like, how can we screw these corrections officers, police officers, or whatever? It's always their fault, and whatever. But like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube-y stuff. One thing that I will ask, I'm going to put it in a community post. My laptop is about ready to hit it's on its last leg. If I unplug it for 2 seconds, it goes down to 0. Internal battery problem. Plus, it's like, 6 years old. I got to update it. I have a lot of exciting things that I'm going to do, making regular comment with correction stuff. I really don't want to do the frauditor stuff anymore. I've been over that. It's boring to me unless you're getting tased or arrested. I really don't want anything to do with it because it's just too aggravating for me. But I want to get some correction stuff, trolling stuff and everything. But I do have to get a new laptop. And I'm not e-begging for anything. If someone wants to contribute, $5, $10, $20 helps, Cash App, PayPal, whatever. It just helps helps me get to, buy a different laptop faster to be able to, give a better product. Really on YouTube, to be honest, with the giveaways and all this stuff and shipping and this and that, having to buy new stuff to replace the old stuff. I've made maybe $200 on YouTube over the past 9 months net. I mean, but that is the point of being on YouTube, isn't to make a profit. It isn't. It's to be entertained, to come here to laugh with everybody, be informative, give my opinions on things, to give you my experience on things, especially when it comes in, to corrections and everything. It was never meant to be, a windfall for making a ton of money on it. But that being said, I am just a correctional officer, a divorced correctional officer with kids, with a lot of child support and all that stuff. And so, the net money that I can save towards a laptop every pay period is minimal. And so, if people want to help out, great. If not, that's cool too. You just being here, watching my stuff helps out tremendously. Let's keep growing this channel. I know I lost a lot of subs over the whole Wrangler stuff, and there's a handful of people trying to create false narratives. I guess I'm a police stalker now. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I'm probably the most investigated person over the past, 5 years. You would think that would have come up, after my local police departments have been talked to, by different correctional officer or corrections agencies, the state of Illinois and Iowa. Let's see who else, the American Bar Association, and, but, they take one thing here, they take one thing here and try to paint it into something it's not. It's ridiculous. I think everybody who's known me in this community for the past, I've been part of this community for the past, 4 years or so, people know me. These accusations are ridiculous. They are absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, if you want to help out, I don't mean to get off on a tangent. Great. If not, that's cool too. I just appreciate you here, showing up to my video and, hearing what I have to say, giving my opinion. If you agree with my opinion, great. If not, that's cool too. All I can do is give my opinion, give you my experience based in corrections in this certain case, and take it or leave it. But I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much. Hope everybody has a great week coming up. Hope everybody had a great Veterans Day. Again, to all you veterans, thank you so much for your service. I really do appreciate it. Love y'all. Y'all have a great day, great week, and God bless you. Take care of each other and take care of